Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be talking about the jungle for my Clash tier list. So to begin with, I've already made the tier list. This is going to be slightly different. I want to talk about it a bit more in depth, so I've pre-made it and I'll explain the reasoning for a lot of these placements and the champs here. So let's begin with the F tier. Teemo, Cho'Gath, Singed, Malphite, Nasus, Kiana and Twitch. Some of these are hardly played in the jungle at the moment, or if they are very slow clearers, very resource reliant. Things like your Kianas, they need a lot of kills to be far ahead of the enemy jungler, and it takes a lot more resources to get them going, and in turn they just become either one trick pony kind of champions where you only play this champion so you're good at it and you can kind of work around some of its issues. But in that case, it's not really worth picking if you're first timing or you haven't put a lot of games into them in Clash, so I wouldn't recommend any of these champions. The tier above, there are some champions here which do function. Things like Taric are good junglers. Once again, he's very conditional and it's very much a case of OTPs that they're really the only ones who are gonna be playing them. Gwen and Jax are good hyper carries. If you have an enchanter paired with these champions, they can be really strong, but they take a lot of resources. In this very bot-sided meta at the moment, we're gonna see champs which are fairly low econ or spike quite nicely off one or two items, or are tanks doing a lot better. Things like Ivan, really good enabler for ADCs, but complicated to play. Also doesn't see a lot of play in general, so he isn't bad. I don't think he's terrible, but I wouldn't recommend him. Talia, Shyvana, Mundo, Mordekaiser, Volibear, Poppy, Trundle, Xin, and Nidalee are the next lot. A lot of these champs are also kind of conditional. They are less of a burden to your team than the champs below, but have either been nerfed. Things like Shyvana, Mord, Volley have all been nerfed quite hard in recent or past, but haven't really recovered from the nerfs. Mundo is also another champ which got nerfed. His AD on his E got hit quite heavily, and overall it's just made him significantly weaker as a champion. Poppy got nerfed when she was really meta. Her Q damage does a lot less to monsters than it used to. Trundle also got nerfed. Did get buffed more recently. Same with Xin, also got buffed more recently, but hasn't quite made the same recovery as they did back along. Nidalee isn't terrible, just very, very needy in the amount of resources she has. In this meta where we're not seeing as much invading happening because you're almost punished for invading because you do less damage to the enemy camps, Nidalee doesn't do as well. This will obviously change the next patch, but as we're talking about this patch in the Clash this weekend, she's not going to perform as well. Then the tier above, Skarner, not a bad champion. Really good lockdown onto the ADCs. Makes him quite valuable within most team comps. Fairly good frontline. Things like Iceborne, Barmies, stuff like this will work quite nicely on him. He can also, he likes the value of the Sheen and Frostfire as well. Diana isn't doing as well as she used to, but has nice pairings. Things like Yasuo quite well. She enables good AD mid laners. Yone, Yas, Talon, Tristana, all these come to mind. Graves isn't as good as he used to be as well. He still itemizes into a more lethality heavy build. Things like Eclipse and Umbral aren't bad on him, but with the crit build being less prevalent and not really being what he mainly goes at the moment, plus shield bow feeling quite bad on him, he's not doing as well. You can still obviously 1v9 on this champion. He does take decent amount of resources to get going, but once he does, his Q and his R do a lot of damage. He himself does a lot of damage as well. Viego got buffed more recently. Isn't performing as well as I hoped he would, but I think that's mainly coming down to the fact that people are still itemizing Divine Sunder on him. Definitely go for the Kraken build, it's a lot better. He can probably push into VA, also likes enchanters, is quite healthy in the current jungle meta as well. Lilia closes quite quickly, does a lot of damage, has a lot of burn, just not as strong as she used to be. Demonix being slightly weaker, doing less burn to camps, has hurt her, but she's still pretty good. Sylas is a fan favorite within the jungle. Still the most popular AP jungler at the moment. Does a lot of things. Steals ultimates. Is kind of tied to the value of the ultimates on the enemy team. You have to go with that Night Harvester build. And he has a lot of value when you do opt into that. And there's a lot of ults on the enemy team. But once again, kind of resource hungry. So I put him in the B tier. Same with Karthus. Really strong if you can get a lot of resources on him. Scales quite nicely. Does a lot of damage. Just resource hungry compared to a lot of the other champs. Shaco can go AP or AD, both are very viable at the moment. AD, of course, is going to be worse in a team environment, as people are going to probably set up more vision, have more of an idea of what he wants to do, his playstyle, and be a bit more careful around it. AP Shaco, pretty good, takes a bit of time to ramp. Of course, you want the Leandries and the Demonic. Demonic being slightly weaker does hurt him, but it's still pretty good. Olaf, good flex potential, really good value in the top lane and in the jungle at the moment. Works quite well in both. If it's a bad matchup in the top lane, put him in the jungle. Works quite nicely. Warwick, quite a nice hyper carry in the sense of he does a lot of raw damage early, lots of sustain. If he gets ahead, he's really unstoppable and can just 1v9. If you opt into the more tanky build, which a lot of people do, he's quite valuable as a tank. His ult gives him a lot of tools to stick onto the ADC and just do a lot of raw damage. Hecarim, less strong than he used to be, but with Spirit Shojin Eclipse or Spirit Shojin Radiant builds do work. He's, of course, quite reliant on just being able to snowball and sustain his advantage. Does a lot of damage. Once he's ahead, things like Zilean are really powerful tools to pair with him. He's got loads of strong pairings if you can find them and you know what they are. Things like Sivir, Zilean, things which give movement speed, Orianna, good backline engage. Then he's really valuable. Kindred, really good hyper carry. Same with Master Yi, just very resource hungry, kind of harder to pilot. I wouldn't say Yi's the hardest champ to pilot. Of course, he's known for being the easy kind of hyper carry champion, just farm too late. Of course, because we're not in that kind of a meta at the moment, he can struggle if he falls behind or if the enemy ADC is far ahead, because he will just get blown up. Rek'Sai is pretty nice if you're someone who plays a lot of a champion. Of course, power score is what she's really tied to. You do have to close out games fairly early, which does make her weaker in a clash and flex environment. Teams will try and drag on games. There'll be less kills overall as people are playing safer and more intellectual about the game. Kha'Zix, quite a nice assassin. Invades being less strong at the moment does hurt him, but he's still got a lot of value. His W does a lot of damage, and the slow is really valuable. You can opt into the Gore Drinker build. I think Eclipse and the Lethality build is still his best way to go, but you can itemize that way. Maokai, less strong than he used to be. Isn't quite the same 1v9 Demonics Radiant or Demonics Leandry's first strike bot. He does do a lot of damage, but it's not anywhere near as much as it used to be. He doesn't have as much control with the saplings who are on a longer cooldown, do less damage, have less slow. He's still pretty valuable though. You can just opt into full tank Maokai jungle. The Q has a lot of value as they increase the max health damage on it. I'd recommend putting him in the top lane, but he has a lot of flex. He has a lot of good pairings. Things like ASO pair quite nicely with him, as he can hold them in ASO E, ASO R, stuff like this. So there's still value to this champion. He's not bad, just not as strong as he used to be. Good setup, works well in a more team-oriented environment. Elise, definitely weaker than before. I contemplated putting Elise in the C tier. She's very early game skewed, which, of course, games being kind of slower is going to hurt. She's kind of similar to Nidalee. I just consider her a bit stronger than Nidalee, as she has a form of CC. But if you enjoy playing the champion, you're good at it, and you can get early wins through the champion just and her early game pressure through diving bot and just being powerful, then play the champion, because it will still get you wins. Zac, weaker, got nerfed fairly recently. Demonics also got nerfed. He's still pretty strong though. Good frontline tank. He's more of an early game champion than people realize. Has a lot of power within his sustain, his passive. And as you go later into the game, the itemization becomes harder and weaker. He gets less gold. The 2-3 item power spike on Zac is where you mainly want to get to and just kind of be powerful, close out games with that. Still a good champion. Definitely one of the better tanks at the moment. There are other tanks I would recommend because they have better forms of engage or more engage. Or I wouldn't say better forms, because Zaki is a really powerful form of engage. It's on a basic ability, but he doesn't have the same lockdown which some of the other tanks do. Echo, really good snowball jungler, probably one of the better AP snowball junglers. The only one which kind of comes, which I consider better at the moment is Eve, and then Fiddle. These are the three kind of AP junglers which I'd recommend playing. These are all really strong at what they do. Echo has really good counter gank, good snowball potential. Fiddle has really strong farming, really good level 6, really powerful ganks, really powerful team fight. Eve has a really good pick, really good damage, and just overall snowball potential. Make sure you pick up Medjay. She's really hard bound to Medjay at the moment. I cannot state this enough. All these three champs are really good. Gragas is kind of another one. Really good AP champ, good flex potential at the moment as well. I definitely recommend playing all 4 of these champions if you do play them. Rammus, fairly simple champion at the moment. Really good answer into AD comps. If you see triple AD and you haven't picked jungle yet, definitely pick Rammus. It works really well. Kayn, really good champion at the moment. Got buffed fairly recently. Blue and red are both viable. Blue is slightly better, but of course, because we're in a more team environment, you're going to want to probably opt into red. It's got better team fighting. If you have shielding and healing on your comp, then it can just infinite and just kind of 1v9 through that. Cleaver, going buffed, really value on him. He can go Eclipse, can go Prowlers, can go Gore Drinker. There we go. Lee Sin, massive buffs. Lee Sin is really good at the moment. He's kind of rising up to be one of the most powerful champs on this current patch. If you play him, he's really good. Definitely, you got to remember to close out games though. He does fall off still, even though they did change his E from bonus to total AD. He will, yeah, obviously fall off. Rengar, really powerful champion. Can be S tier if you play him. He will just one-shot most champions. He does an insane amount of damage. Really benefited from the crit changes. Things like Essence and IE work quite nicely on him. You don't need IE. You can just sit on the Essence and opt into Eclipse and a more lethality heavy build. But both do work. Sejuani, really good champion at the moment. Good tank. Just overall confidence in the champion's quite high because of the value she can provide through R, her CC. She has so many slows and just her abilities have a lot of power. Fairly simple to play as well. Definitely pick this champion if you're looking for someone where you have a couple of melees and you could do someone with a good amount of lockdown, frontline. Sejuani works quite well. Nocturne, really, really good champion as a snowball AD threat. You can build him full lethality. You can go the stride breaker build. I definitely recommend full lethality. You can just one-tap some people. Eclipse and Duskblade work quite well. So does Axiom. Definitely consider Nocturne. Vi, really good lockdown. Same kind of thing for Sejuani, except from she's more raw AD, does a lot of damage. Can go Eclipse, can go Divine Sundara. I'd recommend the Eclipse build. Can also go Radiant. Radiant does work if you want to go a more tanky frontline build. But then, at that point, you'd probably be better off picking Sejuani. I'd recommend going more damage on Vi. Something like a Cleaver into the Radiant. Definitely works quite well if you want more damage. Same with like Halo Blades Conqueror. Aftershock if you're going more tanky. Mumu, still good after the nerfs. Just not as powerful. Demonics is still a really strong item on him if you're going for more like, if you want a more of a drain tank kind of champion. Amumu's quite good at that. Really strong ultimate. Really powerful early game, to be honest. Like, he still has a lot of power in double bandage toss. A lot of his power is taken out of his late through the nerfs. So his early still relatively fine. Yeah, double Q. Oh, really powerful lockdown tools. Definitely recommend him. Udyr, we covered him before. Kind of, just this all-rounder jungler, good ganks, good scaling, good damage, good sustain, can go AD, can go AP, can go tank. Couple of builds there. Really powerful champion. If you enjoy playing Udyr and you have enchanters, he's also really strong. Bel'Veth, also really good at the moment. Kraken Slayer works quite nicely on her. She's just overall a really high raw AD damage champion. If you can play the champion, definitely recommend it. I would almost compare her to something like a Lee Sin. She's actually fairly early game skewed, even though she has the infinite scaling on her passive. She does scale if you get ahead and get a lot of those stacks, like, unlike Lee Sin, but is actually kind of early game skewed. The 3 S-tier champs I'm going to recommend though at the moment are Jarvan. Jarvan is incredibly strong, easy to play, really good gank setup. Make sure you go Eclipse or Gore Drinker. I'd recommend Eclipse, but if you're going for more of a tanky frontline playstyle, Gore Drinker still works. Into the Cleaver, GA. Make sure you close out games fairly early. He does fall off. Does have a lot of value in his EQR combos. Really powerful champion. Definitely recommend. Wukong. Still really good at the moment. His overall damage is really high. Spikes quite nicely off Divine Sundara and Cleaver as well. And the overall power of this champion just gives him so much presence on the map. He can 1v1 most AD champions of the current meta. His Q has shred on it, and overall he can tear through most champions once you have a couple of items. Scales not badly, and has a fairly okay early game. So overall this champion's just a really good all-round AD champion. Yeah, I'd recommend playing him if you do play him. Nunu, incredibly powerful early game ganks. He's really hard to track because his snowball gives him so much map control. And the pressure this champ can provide is really, really good. Like, really, really yeah, like it's so much pressure because the enemy is forced to play under the turrets unless they risk being ganked by Nunu or having to place deep vision, which of course can allow them to get picked by Nunu. Overall, the champ is tanky, does a lot of, or it doesn't do a lot of damage, but if you opt into things like Dark Seal and a more AP heavy build, he will do damage. He has good ratios, and the overall tankiness of this champion when you opt into things like Radiant and Sunfires is really high. I have lost my voice. So, thank you guys for watching. Those are my overall thoughts on the jungle at the moment. Make sure you're playing, honestly, you can play a lot of these champs from B upwards. It's mainly a case of if you play them and you're confident and just making sure you have good confidence on the champion. Of course, the S tier champions are really good and fairly simple at the moment, so I'd recommend playing them if your jungler is someone who plays a lot as much as like someone who obviously plays all roles and just messes around with most champions. Definitely stick to like the simpler ones. So enjoy the content, thanks for subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.